So images have surfaced of Anthony Joshua following on from a sparring session that Anthony Joshua and Mariusz Wach had together. Mariusz Wach, obviously a guy who's fought Klitschko, fought Povetkin, and is known for having an incredibly strong chin. I've had lots of messages on my social media, and my social media links are in the description below. But I've had lots of messages about this, and people seem to be extremely interested in Mariusz Wach as a sparring partner, and some people are very passionate that he isn't good prep for Wladimir Klitschko. Some people think he is very good prep, and I've had a number of people wanting to hear my opinion on it, so I thought, why not make a video to discuss. Before I give my opinion, let me start by discussing the pros and cons of Mariusz Wach as a sparring partner that are put forward by some of the people that I've been discussing with. So if we start with the pros of Mariusz Wach: experienced operator who's been campaigned at a high level before, as I've already said, been in with Klitschko, been in with Povetkin. Very, very durable, known as possibly having the best chin in heavyweight boxing. He's not someone who AJ's just going to flick and get out of there with a jab, and I think a lot of heavyweights who come to spar Anthony Joshua will probably be very tentative, very nervous, because they've seen how destructive he is in the ring, and you'd have to assume that Mariusz Wach is going in there without that fear. Wach's also a very, very big guy. A number of people were actually surprised, and I've put the image as the thumbnail to this video, but there's a few images around where Anthony Joshua actually looks fairly small compared to Mariusz Wach. Now, I've seen it from a wider angle, and I know that Mariusz Wach is wearing boxing boots, whereas AJ's barefoot. So I think that's possibly got something to do with it. But Wach's a very, very big man, naturally a very tall, big man. And yeah, I think that's another good part of the experience for Joshua, because obviously Klitschko's a very, very big guy similarly. If you look at Wladimir Klitschko, he's very, very good, but in many ways he's semi-predictable as a boxer. He's a guy who commits to the jab. He's a guy who looks to box from the outside. He puts forward clean, long-range combinations. He's got a lead left hook. But is he the most versatile? Probably not. He's someone who looks to close down and hold on the inside. He's someone who never really likes to fight on the inside. He just looks to hold and close down and stifle. He's someone who never really punches to the body. So Klitschko's very, very good, but we kind of know what he's going to do. And I guess Mariusz Wach is a guy similarly who falls into that category. Wach's a guy who clearly isn't as good as Klitschko, but is a guy who is potentially at his most effective when he establishes the jab from range, when he looks to box from long distance, when he looks to fight with that mentality, I guess. So yeah, I can see reasons why Mariusz Wach is a good sparring partner. He's someone who uses the jab, someone who boxes from range, someone who's been tested at a high level, someone who's very, very durable, someone who is of a similar size and stature to these giant heavyweights. So there's reasons for Mariusz Wach. The reasons against Mariusz Wach are simply that at this stage of his career, he's kind of known as and this is harsh, but some people have said he's a high-level punching bag, or a high-level opponent. Wach's the kind of guy who, when he's put up to the top level, when he's put in with guys like Klitschko and guys like Povetkin, he puts on credible performances where he gets praised for sticking in there rather than actually doing anything of note, rather than winning rounds. And there's kind of the suggestion that Mariusz Wach has got that sparring partner mentality where he's more really about surviving and about sticking in there as opposed to actually going and winning a fight. And I guess, people have concerns that Mariusz Wach, he's obviously a lot slower than Wladimir Klitschko. He obviously doesn't carry the power of Wladimir Klitschko, and maybe he's just an out-and-out sparring partner. And it's funny to criticise someone for being an out-and-out sparring partner when they've been recruited as a sparring partner, but I think people are expecting Joshua maybe to be in with some more high-level sparring. Now, potentially, and I would certainly say that may be slightly unrealistic, given these are heavyweights, they have huge earning potential, and it's questionable whether some of the big-name heavyweights are going to come over and take much smaller money to be a sparring partner when there's so much earning potential actually having real fights in the heavyweight division. But anyway, that's a video for another day perhaps. So let me give you my take on this. I actually think, to an extent, who Anthony Joshua's sparring for this matchup is a little bit irrelevant. I think it's good that he's getting sparring. I think he needs to be getting sparring with guys of a top 50, top 100 sort of level. But I think really it's unrealistic to think that Anthony Joshua could get sparring partners that would be immediately comparable to what Wladimir Klitschko is going to pose in terms of a test. I mean, if you were thinking of the very, very best sparring to prepare you for Wladimir Klitschko, realistically, who would you choose? You'd maybe choose Kubrat Pulev. He's a guy who's another standout amateur who commits to the jab, who likes to hold on the inside. He kind of has a similar style to Wladimir. But again, you could criticise that. You could say Pulev has no power. Pulev has not got the size of Wladimir Klitschko. You could say Pulev's a poor man's Wladimir Klitschko. And realistically, that's unrealistic anyway. Pulev's had the opportunity to fight Joshua in the ring for big money. He's not going to take tiny money to fight him as a sparring partner. Perhaps you could also consider David Price as a sparring partner. Price is a big guy. Price is a guy who throws jab, cross from long range. Price is a guy with very, very big power. But again, you could criticise that. You could say Price is a guy with a glass chin. Price is a guy coming off a big loss. And again, realistically, that's an unrealistic opponent as well, isn't it? Price is someone who suffered a devastating knockout last time. It's kind of unclear whether he's even still going to box. He's not going to want to go in and be brutalised in sparring. Plus, there's the history between Price and Joshua in their previous spars where supposedly Price knocked Joshua out, and you'd have to wonder whether they'd want to have further spars after that. I don't know. There's other names you could pick at a fringe level. Maybe you could pick guys like Dimitrenko, who's coming off a win over Granat. Perhaps you could pick a guy like Alexander Ustinov. But my point is, realistically, there are very, very few heavyweights who can actually pose the threat of Wladimir Klitschko in the ring. And the best way that AJ has had throughout his career of preparing for Wladimir Klitschko is actually the sparring that he's already enjoyed with Wladimir Klitschko when he himself was brought into Klitschko training camp earlier on in his career as a sparring partner. If you look at the test that Wladimir Klitschko poses, I think it's relatively unique in the context of today's heavyweight division. And I don't actually think there are any fighters out there who you could necessarily spar and get huge confidence that you'd be able to deal with Wladimir Klitschko based on how your sparring session goes with that kind of fighter. So from that perspective, for me, it is somewhat irrelevant, and I actually think Mariusz Wach is a perfectly respectable sparring partner. I've sensed a little bit of negativity that Joshua's sparring Mariusz Wach, and that he isn't necessarily good enough to prep you for a fight versus Wladimir Klitschko. But I think Joshua will be using the sparring more as a way of working on things on his game, as a way of getting himself ready, getting himself feeling what it's like to have punches coming his way, that sort of thing, as opposed to sparring Mariusz Wach, trying to think, right, I've landed a jab against Wach here, that means I'm going to land it against Wladimir Klitschko. Put simply, Wladimir Klitschko has been the dominant heavyweight of the last decade. Wladimir Klitschko, in my opinion, has amassed an all-time great resume, and it's unrealistic, really, to think that you can get people in sparring who are going to provide a similar test to Wladimir Klitschko. So I think any criticism of Mariusz Wach as a sparring partner is, to be honest, a little bit unfair. And I think that the pros of having a guy like Mariusz Wach in camp, with his experience, with his size, with his durability, far outweigh any perceived negatives that Joshua will maybe be getting used to a guy who's a bit more slow and a bit more lumbering than Wladimir Klitschko. Klitschko, for what it's worth, has been sparring with Gerald Washington, as I understand it. Now, I haven't heard any reports from that sparring or seen any photos from it. I guess Washington's another guy like Joshua who's very big, very athletic, very, very different stylistically to Anthony Joshua. But, a guy who likes to establish the jab, likes to fight from range, etc. So, again, you could put some comparators there. But I guess the same really applies In that Klitschko's unlikely to find a guy who is as dynamic, as powerful, as explosive, as athletic as Anthony Joshua to spar, because there are a reason these guys are the top two active heavyweights, Klitschko and Joshua, from my perspective, and that's probably because their styles aren't so easily replicated by all sorts of sparring partners. Anyway, just my opinion on this one. I kind of saw it as a little bit of a non-story, but it's something that I've noticed has generated discussion on the forums and on social media. So there we go. I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring. For me, I'd rather be with Mariusz Wach in sparring than without him. Let me know your thoughts, people. Is this good prep for a Wladimir Klitschko fight? Are you kind of like myself? You're indifferent? What do you make of this story? Also, give me your take on Klitschko sparring Gerald Washington ahead of the fight. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the vid, do take the time to click the thumbs up button. That helps me get extra visibility to the channel. And if you're new and you haven't done so before, do take the time to subscribe and drop me a follow on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @BoxingGossip. Many thanks indeed for tuning in, guys. Appreciate it as always.